Supporters of the House version insist it should prevail as it makes real-time electronic transmission to INEC portal mandatory, arguing that this will strengthen transparency and ensure votes count. Join us now this morning on Breakfast Central is a spokesman of the House of Representatives and a member representing Ekiti North 1, Ikole, Oye, Federal Constituency, Honourable Akin Rotimi. A warm welcome to you, Honourable Rotimi, and thanks for joining us this morning on Breakfast Central.
Good morning, Joe and Olive, and good morning, Nigerians. It's always a pleasure to engage.
Great to have you, Honourable. Could you start by sharing what the House of Reps' take is on the national controversy, on the current, controversy regarding the manual clause the Senate added to the Electronic Transmission Amendment?
Well, the House of Reps' position is simply that we'll continue to act in the best interest of Nigerians. As it is now, we remain committed to the legislative process. Our duty is also to keep on educating Nigerians about where we are and where the process leads up to from here. As you know, the House passed its version of the bill in December. Right now, we have the Senate that has passed, their own version of the bill with a number of, provisions that differ. And the parliamentary process is very simple, which is that both the House and the Senate will have to sit together to harmonize and come out with a single version. So which is what is happening now. We have 12 members from the House of Representatives and 12 members from the Senate that are sitting down in a joint conference committee to be able to harmonize and come out to the final version. Of course, we know that the timelines are very steep. We realize that, they need to expedite their work. And you remember that His Excellency, the Senate President, Godswill Akpabio, had mentioned that he was going to instruct that they expedite the process. And for us, this is what the House led by Right Honourable Abbas Tajudeen fully conforms with, that they expedite this process to arrive at a unified version as quickly as possible. So I don't see it very much as controversy. I see it simply as democracy in play. I see it simply as the parliamentary process, being played out. I see it as, civic engagement, civil society, and all those that are agitating for free, fair, and credible elections, having their say in the process, in putting pressure on we as lawmakers to do what's in the best interest of Nigerians. So essentially, the House of Representatives remains committed to this process, and we would, work to ensure that, the eventual version of the bill that's harmonized and passed, reflects the yearnings of Nigerians.
But what safeguards would you say are being put in place to ensure that, we prevent a technical execution or technical excuses on this day? Because you saw what happened with the tax laws and the controversy therein, saying, what we approved was not what was gazetted. So what safeguards will the House put in place, or has the House put in place, to ensure that we do not see a repeat of such occurrence?
Okay, so the National Assembly is an institution of records, right? And what, your reference to the tax bills was simply a matter of, a version of the tax bills that was different from what it is that was passed, that was being circulated around, not by the National Assembly, but from other sources that were not authorized. And what we did as an institution is to direct that the properly gazetted version, be, made available to the public. And we have an Authentication Act that prescribes that the only authority that can, release a version of, the correct version of any bill, any law that has been passed is the clerk to the National Assembly. And he was the one that issued, the Gazette. He released the Gazette and also directed that the government printers, per the provisions of the Authentication Act, gave the instruction that it should be made available to the public. So it's that was what happened. And in this extant case of the Electoral Act, we remain committed to the process. Our processes are transparent, both in the House and the Senate. We're going to, they've started meeting, engaging, because they know that they have very, very, very tight timelines. As you know, the membership of the committee is bipartisan. You have members from all over Nigeria. All the geopolitical regions in zones in Nigeria are represented. It's also bipartisan. You have members from the APC, you have members from APGA, you have members from, Labour Party, and all the like. So, for me, speaking personally, I know my thoughts that I'll be sharing with my colleagues, who are saddled with this responsibility of sitting down to harmonize. So, and I think that is what it is that all Nigerians are looking forward to now, for both, parties to sit down and come out, with a version that reflects, the yearnings of Nigerians for free, credible, and fair elections, that also takes into account where we are and the challenges that we have in the country as well.
Okay, so 12 members are meeting from the Senate, 12 members from the House. Everyone is coming together, and can you tell us if Nigeria should expect a closure today? Because everyone is worried, and can you also confirm to us that, the House of Representatives had initially agreed on real time, because there seems to be some discrepancies around that the House of Representatives had agreed on real time, but when it came to the Senate, it was quite different, so on and so forth. Just help us with that.
Well, okay, I can't promise for today, but I realize that, we understand the responsibility that we have and the implications of coming back to us very quickly on the 2027 elections. So they've been given the mandate to expedite the process of coming back to the Committee of the Whole for us to consider the outcomes of their deliberations. Of course, the version that was passed in December by the House was not just the outcome of efforts from the House. I would say that it's the outcome of, joint efforts of both the House and the Senate, because from very many months before that, both the Electoral Committee of the House and the Senate Electoral Committee are dissolved into a joint House and Senate Committee on Electoral Matters to deliberate on these issues. A lot of Nigerians had their input, civil society, from across the board had, input in the process, in arriving at, those provisions. So it's also part of the legislative process that when a committee lays its report before the Committee of the Whole, there are deliberations, you look at it a little more closely, and that's why we have a bicameral legislature. In some cases, one chamber feels, okay, yes, what the committee has done, we can adopt. In total, the other feel that we should have a look. And you would see that, yes, the House's version prescribed for real-time transmission. The Senate, in their own wisdom, felt, okay, let us take into cognizance, the challenges of technology. That's debatable, but that's their position, that let them leave a fail-safe clause that in the event that there's any communication gaps or anything, then, we'll fall back to manual transmission. But both versions actually mandates electronic transmission of votes. But overall, I would like to also clarify that both the House and the Senate, the National Assembly as an institution, my counterpart in the Senate, Senator Yemi Adaramodu, the spokesperson of the Senate, has been on the media also clarifying, it's about rebuilding the trust that Nigerians have. Most of this backlash and the agitations and the advocacy, is sometimes because it's a function of the distrust that people have for leaders generally, but also the legislature. And we are working really hard, to regain the trust by ensuring that the outcomes of this process reflect the agitations of Nigerians. I'd also like to clarify that this is not an opposition agenda, as some would want to frame. It's not an opposition agenda. It's a bipartisan agenda. The House has majority APC. In the Senate, it's majority APC as well. So all of what it is that we are doing is because all Nigerians want free, fair, and credible elections. So it's not about the opposition pushing for this. It is all Nigerians pushing for this. Yesterday on the program, I shared that if His Excellency President Bola Ahmed Tinubu had the opportunity, he would also come and protest for, free, fair, and credible elections, because he's a Democrat and he believes, that he should also be able to deliver free, fair, and credible elections. So it's not a rhetoric that the opposition is pushing us in a direction. It is what all Nigerians, regardless of a partisan background, wants, that we have free, fair, and credible elections, and that is what the National Assembly is committing to delivering.
Thank you, Honourable Rotimi. Now, still talking about free, fair, and credible elections, Nigerians have also scrutinized the National Assembly and saying, you know, when it comes to contentious and very serious issues like this, that the National Assembly should also look inwards and adopt electronic voting so that citizens and constituents can track the voting pattern of their representatives, and also as part of the accountability process, know how their representatives have voted, rather than leave very important issues to voice votes, which is very hard to deter. I mean, if you have a baritone voice and if you're very good in screaming, their eyes would always have it. So what do you make of this? Is it a conversation that is ongoing, and is it something that the House of Representatives,
yes,
for example, is looking to adopt in the nearest future?
So thank you very much, Biga. And, you know, very valid. It's part of both the Senate rules and the House rules, which guides our parliamentary process, that if you call for a division, then you want to look at, you know, the granular pattern of how each senator or how each member votes on an issue. And you'll recall that during the last plenary of the Senate, Senator Ina Abaribe had called for a division, even though he stepped down subsequently, which you will have then seen that in play. And I'm happy to share with Nigerians that in the coming weeks, we'll be voting on provisions on the constitutional review process, and that is definitely going to have, it's going to be by division, it's going to be by electronic voting. Towards the end of last year, we actually tried out, you know, the House Committee on House Services, you know, chaired by Representative Amos Daniel, you know, had led the House in the process of testing, you know, to make sure that, you know, all those, you know, equipment work properly. So in the coming weeks, we're going to see both the House and the Senate vote on constitutional amendments, provisions, proposals. There are about 40 of them, you know, on various issues such as state policing, the issue of independent candidacy in elections, the issue of reserved seats for women, local government autonomy. So many issues have gotten to the point, been cleaned up, the report has been submitted, and we're going to vote on them in coming weeks. And, you know, we'll have everyone. And I think that it's part of democracy. If I know the people in Ikole here, for example, would want to know how I'll vote, you know, on certain issues. They want to see that I'm accountable to voting, you know, on issues that are important to them. You know, same thing for people from all constituencies as well. So electronic voting is definitely voting by division as against voting by voice vote is definitely part of our parliamentary procedures. It's part of the Senate rules, it's part of the House rules, and you're going to have that in use in the coming weeks on voting on constitutional amendment proposals.
I think that it's very important, you know, to talk about the voting mode. Very important conversation to have, because those are some of the complaints we've heard regarding the use of voice votes, where Nigerians would think this is a weighty issue. Shouldn't this have been, you know, debated in a different manner? So we get to know who's putting their voice behind what. But can you walk us through the process, what the typical legislative process is like, you know, for those who wonder, you know, how do these amendments come to pass? What are the stages that we have to go through before we can finally say, you know, this law has been amended or this law has been passed?
Thank you very much. And I like that question a lot, because it's an opportunity to engage with Nigerians on the electoral process. As we know, a bill is introduced at the very early stages. A bill can come either as a House bill or a Senate bill. If it comes as a House bill, or in whatever chamber it comes, is introduced, you know, by way of, you know, being published in the journal, right? And then it comes for first reading. When it comes for first reading, when it's listed for first reading in both the notice paper for the week and also the order paper for a particular day, then everybody is put on notice that this bill has been listed. And then it's then scheduled. Between that time, it is expected that the sponsor of that bill takes time to, lobby colleagues, educate the public on the provisions of this bill. And then it is then listed subsequently for second reading, right? When you're then expected to debate on the floor with your colleagues. And at that stage, it's either negative or it's passed, to move on to the next stage. If it passes, it's referred to a relevant committee. So if it's a health bill, so this electoral bill, for example, is referred to the House Committee on Electoral Matters, who then deliberates on the bill internally. They hold a public hearing. Most of our public hearings per our House rules, we are mandated to publish in the papers and, invite stakeholders from across the sector. They come, share their thoughts. After all of that, after a lot of work, the committee puts together a report that's laid before the House for consideration. After its consideration, clause by clause, it's voted on. Then that's when you can say it can also be negative at that point, but at that point you can then say it's passed for third reading, either in total or certain provisions are stepped down. Now, if it's a House bill, it's then transmitted to the Senate, for concurrence, and then it goes through a similar process before the Senate also passes. If the Senate, for any reason, believes that there are certain provisions that should be amended, then it calls for conference, right? And same thing as well, that process can also go simultaneously in both the House and the Senate, which is what happened in this case. So when you now have differences, you call for conference for them to be able to harmonize and come up with one single process. Now, when that is done, it goes back to those both chambers again to be voted on. Then that is when it is then considered passed, in both chambers. And then when it is passed, of course, we have a lot of work also internally. That's why, many people always feel when you talk of the National Assembly, in terms of the budget for the National Assembly, for example, they think it's just 360 members and 109 senators. There's a whole bureaucracy that works on vetting these, bills and all of that before it's transmitted to the president for his assent. And when that happens, of course, the president also has his own process. He has to write to the Attorney General to advise him, give, his legal opinion on it and all of that before the president then decides to either withhold assent or pass the bill. Now, in relation to this bill, you will see that we have also worked very hard because of the timelines to ensure that all stakeholders are also carried along. So when the House Committee on Electoral Matters had been engaging, we'd engaged extensively with INEC, we'd engaged extensively with the judiciary, and all stakeholders so that we know exactly what their thoughts are. So it's not that we arrive at a bill that has been passed that is then now not acceptable to INEC, they say they can't implement the provisions, or the judiciary has any issues around, being able to interpret that law properly. So these are the, essentially the ways that, laws are made. It's made intentionally, I won't say difficult, but, all these multiple processes is so that we don't arrive at laws that are problematic. You have to look at laws properly to ensure that they don't conflict with the ground law, the Constitution, or any other extant laws, and they work in the best interest of the issues that you're trying to cure. Of course, you know that a bill can be a fresh bill, totally fresh bill, or it can be an amendment to an extant law, which you can then call for, amendments. So Nigerians, again, because every time that there's been military interventions in our body policy, the legislature has always been the one that has been suspended. The judiciary continues, the executive continues in some form, but the legislature, so we're just 25 years, or going to 26 this year, in an unbroken stretch of legislative practice. That's why some of these things are still sometimes strange or alien to Nigerians. Now, Nigerians are understanding the process more, and it's an avenue for Nigerians to know how to engage more. So when you hear that a bill has passed second reading, it's not for you to go and rest. It's for you to ensure that you show up at the public hearing, you submit memoranda, you know when it's coming up for debate, you have to engage your representative, to share your thoughts on what position should be marshaled and all. So for us, and that's why I thank you very much for this platform, News Central. You've done a lot of work in advancing, greater knowledge and understanding of the parliamentary process, and we can only do that a lot more over time to let Nigerians understand the process a lot more.
All right, Honourable. I would like you to stay with us just for a few more minutes. We have a few questions to ask, but let's take a break. After the break, we'll continue this conversation. Stay with us. Welcome back. If you just tuned in, this is Breakfast Central. Maybe you'll be expecting the front pages of the newspapers, but on a Friday like this, we decided to focus on what really matters. Not that the papers don't matter, but because we do have a spokesman, House of Representatives, Honourable Akin Rotimi, who's here with us live in our Abuja studios. So right before the break, we've talked about the processes from the House of Representatives, the Senate, or the joint assembly, how they would look into this, and you've told us that it happens today. 12 members each, or a piece. They'll be sitting down, and there's also a statement from you that Nigerians should not expect that they would be able to do everything today in terms of making sure that the process, the electoral process and reforms are done and dusted. But let's go to another aspect of the conversation that Nigerians are raising. There is a certain fear, which you have also alluded to, mistrust, that comes from Nigerians, the civil society organizations, which has to do with loyalty to either the people or to the current administration. From cap wearing that has the signage of the president, and also down to singing on your mandate at, in the House. So Nigerians are wondering, are these representatives truly representing the people? And how are we certain that starting from this electoral reform, unlike the tax issue, which would also touch a bit, how are we sure that they would have the interests of the people at heart? You're the spokesperson. Can you clarify this?
Right. So I'll tell you, for the House of Representatives, it's a very vibrant mix, of members. You have over 70% or thereabouts that were brand new members that had not held legislative office before now. And at the beginning of the tenure, we had sat down together under Right Honourable Abbas Tajudeen to decide that we were going to make a huge difference and, address this issue of distrust that Nigerians have generally for leaders generally, but specifically about legislators, so people can begin to know that, this 10th Assembly House of Representatives is working in the best interest of Nigerians. So our allegiance are solely to Nigerians and the people that elected us, and that's why you see that we've been the most prolific in terms of the number of bills that have been introduced. As at our mid-year mark last year, by June last year, we had surpassed over 2,500 bills. We have several landmark bills that have, addressed various aspects of human endeavor. We've responded, with, bills and motions to issues that affect Nigerians. So our allegiances are number one to the people, and to our consciences. I know how vibrant our conversations on our platforms are, on issues. For us in the ruling party, it's my role speaking for the House generally, but I'll tell you that as a member of the ruling party, there are issues that we take on privately with our leaders. I'm not an opposition lawmaker. I'm not expected to play to the gallery and come and be sharing details of what it is that I see as opportunities to correct in the system. My duty is to engage with our leaders, both within and also in the executive arm of government, that let's try to do some things a little different. We must remember that quite a number of us, also came from various walks of life, including civil society. Many of us have been on the demand side of good governance, and we count it a rare privilege from God and the people to serve on the supply side of good governance, and we want to write our names in gold that this is the one assembly that Nigerians, started trusting again in the legislature.
Would have loved to press further than that, but we're trying to make the best use of the little time we have left. The primary responsibility of government, and it's even in the Nigerian constitution, is to safeguard the lives of Nigerians. And Nigerians are basically tired of condolences and press statements, oftentimes on the floor of the House of Representatives. They do talk about these issues as a matter of urgent public importance. And I'm talking about the repeated massacres and the terrorism in different parts of the country. In the last 3 weeks alone, over 200 Nigerians have died. Your constituency is, Ekiti State borders Kwara State, borders some troubled areas, and I'm sure it's of concern to you too, the level of insecurity. What specific laws has the National Assembly passed, or is it urgently prioritizing to reform Nigeria's security architecture and to hold security chiefs accountable for multiple intelligence and operational failure that has led to this killings of Nigerians in their hundreds?
So first of all, I should, convey, our condolences on the most recent massacres in Moro and other places. Mr. Speaker had issued a statement in that regard. It's just like you rightly said, it's extremely frustrating and disheartening. Almost every plenary session we have, there is a security-related bill or motion, that's being considered. I, for one, just like you rightly said, I'm from Ekiti State and Ekiti North, right, that borders both Kogi and Kwara states. In fact, the security breakdown that you had in Eruku in Kwara State, many weeks ago, it's literally like 3 kilometers away from Iyemero, which lies in my constituency, barely 3 kilometers. So they could actually hear those gunshots from within my constituency and were extremely traumatized. About 2 years ago, 2 of my traditional rulers were killed within my constituency, were murdered in my constituency on a road that I just passed through myself just about 5 days before that time, and I'd engaged with those same traditional rulers just about 3 days before that time, and it was a whole lot. So, but it's not about lamentations, it's not about emotions, it's the fact that Nigerians are looking to us. Just like you rightly said, the Constitution prescribes primarily our duty about security of lives and property, and we'll continue to advance bills and motions that address this issue. I'm proud of the fact that I'm one of the sponsors of the bill for state policing, for decentralizing our security architecture to allow the subnationals to also be able to have their own systems, their own police. And I believe Mr. President has also said that this is something that he's looking to the National Assembly to fast track. It's one of the constitutional amendment bills that's before the National Assembly now, which we're going to vote on. I believe that my colleagues, both in the Senate and the House, would pass these bills so that we can get the assent of Mr. President and we can, see state policing getting off the ground. Much more than that, there's a human security aspect of these are security challenges, which is that we must ensure that Nigerians, don't see crime as an option. That we address social services and empower Nigerians to be able to take their future into their hands, so that resorting to crime is not an option. So overall, as you know, security is very broad and multifaceted. Holding our security agencies to account is one. We've had sectoral debates. We've had them in attendance.
Honourable Akin Rotimi, I'll have to interject at this point. Unfortunately, it's really painful that we're asking such an important question towards the end. But we're hoping that we can have a part 2 with you, as we need to wrap up this conversation and go on a break now. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for your
this
time.
morning.
Thank you. It's always a pleasure being Joe and Oli to engage, and I look forward to doing this again sometime.
Oh, absolutely. We certainly will be reaching out.
Thank you so much for your time.